Meet Yannick Bolasie, the man who brought African flair to English football. Defenders didn't know what hit them. Half the time they were left standing there, stunned, while fans couldn't stop chanting, "Are you sure he's not Brazilian?" Bolasie was so mesmerizing that people joked he deserved FIFA's first ever 6-star skill moves. At his peak, he became the second most expensive African player in history. But how did he get there? Born in France to Congolese parents and raised in England, Bolasie didn't even step foot in an academy by the time he was 16. His dream wasn't football, it was rapping. But one day, while watching a game on TV, he thought, why not give football a shot? 4 months into trying out for academies, he quit. Instead, he played for a local team in England's 8th tier, earning £20 per game and a free burger for every goal scored. Predictably, he gave up again, planning to become a carpenter under his girlfriend's father. It seemed his football journey was over. But Bolasie used his boredom creatively, filming his matches and uploading highlight reels to YouTube. When his cousin's agent sent those videos around, clubs started noticing. Out of nowhere, teams like Hoffenheim and Sturm Graz came knocking. Eventually, he chose Plymouth, wanting to return to England. However, Plymouth didn't think he was ready for the championship and kept loaning him out. One ironic twist, he ended up at Rushden and Diamonds, the same non-league team he had abandoned years earlier. But Bolasie finally caught a break. A move to Barnet saw him flourish, catching the attention of ex-Crystal Palace player Tony Finnegan, who promised his parents he'd turn Bolasie into a Premier League player within 3 years. Months later, after Plymouth's relegation and bankruptcy, Bolasie joined Bristol City for just £10,000, a steal. In his first season, he became the club's Young Player of the Year, thanks to crucial performances like a late goal that nearly saved the team from relegation. By then, legendary Crystal Palace manager Dougie Freedman had his eyes on him. Within a year of signing for Bristol, Bolasie was valued at £500,000 and had joined Palace. When Bolasie arrived, Palace were bottom of the league. Fans were bracing for disaster, with the team heavily reliant on Wilfried Zaha. But Freedman saw Bolasie's potential and asked if he could be as good as Zaha. Bolasie's response? "I'll be better." By October, Palace had soared into the top 4, with Bolasie and Zaha dismantling defenders left and right. The promotion playoffs were the ultimate stage, and as Bolasie himself said, "In my first season, nobody knew about me. Every defender concentrated on Zaha, so I was always free to do something special." For the rest of the year, he gave Crystal Palace everything he had. Nothing seemed capable of stopping him, not even the sudden and controversial departure of Dougie Freedman mid-season. When the Congolese national team called him up, Bolasie turned them down, declaring that the only thing that mattered was getting Palace back to the top. There was, however, one glaring issue. Bolasie couldn't score. As Palace's assistant manager put it, every game he'd go past 3 or 4 players at pace, using the most wonderful skills, but when it came to shooting, he'd overhit it, and the ball would fly 6 feet over the bar. His lack of academy training was becoming more apparent, especially as he went an entire Premier League season without scoring. For any other forward, this would have been unacceptable, but for Bolasie, it didn't matter. Even with Zaha leaving for Manchester United just as Palace stepped into the top flight, Bolasie completely took over the creative side of the team. That year, he led Palace to one of their greatest seasons ever. Not only did they survive relegation for the first time in the Premier League era, but they came tantalizingly close to a top 10 finish. Match after match, no defender could contain him. His manager, Tony Pulis, once said Bolasie embarrassed Kyle Walker so badly during a match that Spurs had to sub him off and adjust their tactics. Still, no match that season compared to what became known as Kristen Bowl. Picture this: Liverpool, second to last game of the season, needing to beat Palace by as many goals as possible to stay in the title race. With 12 minutes left, Liverpool were up 3-0. Then everything changed. Damien Delaney sparked hope with a goal, and Bolasie, he launched a counterattack and set up Dwight Gale to score. Moments later, Gale struck again, leveling the match. Out of 12,000 Premier League matches, teams had only come back from 3 goals down 24 times. On this occasion, Bolasie was front and center. Liverpool's Glenn Johnson was humiliated so many times by Bolasie that he faced brutal criticism from pundits and had a public meltdown on Twitter later that night. That's what Bolasie did to defenders. He left them clueless. As Alan Pardew later said, other clubs might have tried to change Bolasie, but we recognized he was a maverick and trusted him. That's why he improved so much in just a few years.
I'm trying to do the right thing, yeah, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm saying, yo, man seeing the guy, let me put the cross in. He say, nah, you need to go by him. So man's here, man's gone past him, and the man's got this one to do. Man puts the cross, say, nah, you need to go by him.
His uniqueness makes him special. The following year, even with Zaha returning from United, Palace struggled to win without Bolasie at his best. 10 games in, they'd only managed 2 victories, one of which came from a Bolasie winner. Then against Liverpool once more, he stole the show. His long-range shot rebounded off the post, setting up Dwight Gale to score. Minutes later, Bolasie toyed with the defense, flicking a sombrero over Glenn Johnson before assisting another goal, sealing a 3-1 victory and dragging Palace out of the relegation zone. As casual Premier League fans debated whether his brilliance was luck, Bolasie silenced them a month later. Against Tottenham, pinned into a corner by Sandro and Christian Eriksen, Bolasie pulled off a roulette and flicked the ball over both players in one seamless motion. The stadium erupted, and fans replayed the clip endlessly, marveling at his creativity. His teammates told reporters, he does crazier things in training every day. It's like watching street football, but nothing compared to what he did against Sunderland after a goalless first half. Midway through the match, Alan Pardew decided to try Bolasie in a more central role, and in just 3 minutes, he assisted Glenn Murray. 2 minutes later, he scored his first goal, a clinical striker's finish. Moments after that, he lobbed the keeper for another. Then only 11 minutes after his first goal, he completed his hat trick by dribbling past the keeper and a defender before smashing it into the net. As Bolasie ran to celebrate, the fans chanted, "It's like we're watching Brazil." And for a moment, it really did look like Brazil, because that definitely wasn't the Crystal Palace anyone knew. No Palace player had ever scored a hat trick in the Premier League before, let alone one of the fastest in its history. Who knows what could have happened if Pardew hadn't subbed him off shortly after his third goal. The next season, even though he didn't score between October and New Year's while playing on the wing, every time he was played centrally, he delivered. He scored in wins over Liverpool, bagged a brace against Newcastle, and assisted their only goal against Southampton. But just as fans started believing they'd unlocked the final form of Bolasie, disaster struck. He tore his groin muscle. Without him, Palace went winless for 2 months. A team that had been just below the top 5 was suddenly crumbling. It was clear Bolasie was the heart and soul of that squad. When he returned, the hope of a top 7 finish was gone, so Palace shifted their focus to making history. In the FA Cup, Bolasie gave everything, winning a late penalty in the quarterfinal, scoring the opener in the semi-final, and leading Palace to their second ever FA Cup final. The offers kept coming. Tottenham were relentless. But as an Arsenal fan, Bolasie wasn't too keen on the idea. Then billionaire Farhad Moshiri bought Everton and handed Ronald Koeman a £100 million transfer budget. Everton hijacked the deal, offering Palace £35 million. The transfer made Bolasie Everton's record signing and Palace's biggest ever sale. He became the second most expensive African player of all time, just £1 million shy of Sadio Mane. For someone who had been playing for £20 a game less than a decade earlier, it was a surreal moment. When asked if he'd flop like previous signings Schneiderlin or Iwobi, Bolasie confidently replied, "I know I'm worth it." But then against Manchester United, disaster struck again. In a duel with Anthony Martial, Bolasie ruptured his ACL and his meniscus, a career-ending injury for many. After 11 months, Bolasie returned, but claimed Everton's medical staff rushed his recovery. His old Palace physio was shocked at how weak his knee still was. With Marco Silva arriving and record signing Richarlison taking his place, Bolasie was sidelined. It seemed hopeless, but Bolasie didn't give up. After spells in Turkey and a brief stint at Swansea, he signed for Vasco da Gama in Brazil. The land of beautiful football welcomed the man with flair and tricks. Just weeks ago, Bolasie led the club to a historic Copa win over Vasco, assisting twice, attempting a bicycle kick, and dazzling fans once again. As the crowd chanted, "Are you sure you ain't Brazilian?" it felt like Bolasie had finally found his home.